Murder charges for a group of bullies in the military barracks. Army Private First Class Yoon's autopsy revealed a beating as the cause of his death. Japan is repeating its claim that the sex slavery issue was resolved in a 1965 agreement, even with the condemnation from the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. And the nation ramps up efforts to prevent the Ebola virus from spreading. Seoul says quarantine measures on incoming flights from Africa will be toughened.
Hello and welcome to News Today on KBS World. It's Friday, August 8th. I'm Luke Clary. Murder charges are coming down for a group of bullies in the military barracks. Army Private First Class Yoon's autopsy revealed excessive beating as the cause of his death. And with those results going public, the military is seeking to indict the abusers of murder.
The military's prosecution team has decided to charge the abusers of Private Yoon with homicide. The decision was changed 6 days after the military prosecutors stated that they would not change the charge with bodily harm resulting in death. It is hard to hand down a sentence of more than 10 years in prison for such harm, but for homicide, it is possible for the court to sentence death penalty or life in prison. The military prosecution team has decided to indict the perpetrators on both charges. If the court does not accept the murder charge, the prosecution at least can obtain a guilty verdict for deadly bodily harm. According to Private Yoon's autopsy report, there is a possibility that he had died as a direct result of a shock received from severe beating. The military also obtained testimonies that can prove the abuser's intention to kill. When Private Yoon lost consciousness after a beating, a soldier who instigated reportedly said, "I wish he wouldn't wake up and just die." The Ministry of National Defense delivered such opinions to the military prosecution team investigating Private Yoon's death.
The death of Army Private First Class Yoon has led to revelations of violent abuses and bullying across the nation's military barracks. Some young soldiers were reduced to humiliating and violent treatment.
Arrest warrants have been requested for 3 soldiers serving at the Army's 2nd Ammunition Depot in Yeongcheon, North Gyeongsang Province. They are charged with bullying 13 of their junior colleagues since last April. Their abuses included repeated confinement, forced memorization work, violence, and harassment. One of the senior soldiers used the victims' credit cards and threatened them against reporting the matter to a higher officer. 4 other soldiers involved in the criminal behavior have been booked without arrest, while 2 others are going through disciplinary procedures. The Army unit in question also made news when a corporal committed suicide last month on the day he was discharged from military service. The latest case came to light when a victim's father filed a report with the military police.
육군은 구타 가혹 행위 발본 사고를 위한 자각적인 노력과 이에 대한 숨김없는 공개를 해나갈 것입니다.
Meanwhile, at the 1st Marine Corps Division in Pohang, North Gyeongsang Province, a filthy, outdated act was still very much in practice. A junior serviceman was ordered to lick the outside of a toilet for the reason that it had not been properly dried after cleaning. Both incidents occurred after a ban on beating and abuse in the barracks following the death of the Private First Class known by his surname Yoon. The Defense Ministry halted training and drills at all units on Friday and held a special session on human rights education for all men in uniform.
When the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights issued a statement strongly urging Japan to resolve the sex slave issue, the Japanese government repeated its claim that the issue was settled with a bilateral treaty in 1965. Meanwhile, Japanese politicians from both sides of the aisle are attacking the Asahi Shimbun for running articles admitting past wrongdoings of forcing women into sexual slavery.
Tokyo is stubbornly maintaining its long-standing view even when UN High Commissioner for Human Rights urged Japan to resolve permanently the issue of forced sexual slavery during World War II. The High Commissioner said the human rights violation of the so-called comfort women continues to this day. Tokyo maintained that the issue was completely resolved between Japan and Korea when a bilateral treaty was signed in 1965, and compensations were given through the Asian Women's Fund.
請求権協定によってまず完全に解決済みであるというのが我が国の一貫した立場であると同時に
Meanwhile, Japanese politicians are attacking Asahi Shimbun for having reported on Japan's war crime of forcing women into sexual slavery. The opposition camp led by the Democratic Party of Japan, as well as the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, have launched scathing criticism on the Japanese daily newspaper. Toru Hashimoto, head of the right-wing Japan Restoration Party, even stated that there was no forced recruitment of comfort women from Korea and that Asahi Shimbun had committed a grave sin. Both ruling party and opposition camps are banding together to cover up the wartime atrocity of organized sexual slavery.
日本人の不名誉に同調するような報道を30年以上も訂正せず放置をしてきた責任は重大であり。
Only the moderate New Komeito party has said that the parliament needs to be cautious about denouncing the Asahi Shimbun articles. Japan's shameless denial of the Japanese military's organized sex slavery during World War II is fueling criticism that the government is infringing on the freedom of the press.
The Presidential Unification Preparatory Committee has held its first meeting. President Park Geun-hye said at the meeting that building infrastructure in North Korea is the most urgent task for unification, and vowed to gradually expand inter-Korean cooperation and exchanges.
The Unification Preparatory Committee that was launched on the president's vision that a unified Korea is an economic bonanza to the country held its first meeting. President Park Geun-hye said Seoul will recognize North Korea as a dialogue partner and gradually expand cooperation and exchanges with the North.
현재 정부는 그 대북 제재를 위한 무슨 그 국제 협력을 훼손하지 않는 범위 내에서 남북한이 지금 시작할 수 있는 것부터 그 장기적으로 추진할 수 있는 사업까지 북한에게 구체적으로 제시하고 하나하나 추진해 나가고 있습니다.
She also called for specific measures such as linking an inter-Korean rail system, improving housing conditions in the north, opening a peace park in the demilitarized zone, and holding cross-border exchanges in culture and sports. She also asked officials to diffuse a misunderstanding, as Pyongyang wrongly believes Park's unification vision laid out during her trip to Germany is aimed at unification through absorption.
우리 민간 단체들 또 여러분과 함께 그런 작은 그 일들이 많이 이루어지도록 앞으로 더욱 지금도 뭐 진행하고 있는 게 있지만은 더욱 의지를 가지고 적극적으로 노력을 해야겠다 하는 생각을 했습니다.
In subsequent committee discussions, officials discussed plans of possibly arranging inter-Korean family reunions for the Chuseok holiday and lifting South Korean sanctions on inter-Korean trade. Lawmakers also called for improved ties with the North. Ruling Saenuri Party leaders suggested lifting sanctions, while the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy proposed resuming tours to the North's Mount Kumgang resort. The North has refrained from its slandering against the South recently, with Seoul also resuming its unification pitch. Attention is focused on how inter-Korean relations will pan out in the second half of the year.
The Korean government has failed to identify a man who is treated for diarrhea after returning from Liberia recently. Now, diarrhea is known to be one of the early symptoms of Ebola. The government has said the quarantine measures on the flights departing from Africa will be toughened.
A Mr. Kim, who had returned to Korea on August 1st after a stay in Liberia, began showing symptoms of diarrhea on August 3rd. Immediately after he had returned from the epicenter, he showed a condition similar to the early symptoms of Ebola. The government took no preventive measures until a general hospital diagnosed that his conditions were not related to Ebola.
특이를 했습니다. 이쪽에 들어온 사람들에 대해서는 너무 허술하게 관리를 하는 게 아닌가라는 그런 생각을 했죠.
Mr. Kim and two other travelers from Liberia were all omitted from the Korea Center for Disease Control and Prevention's list of entrants from Ebola-affected countries. The KCDC explained that it was a simple mistake made by the quarantine station. The center has also sent an epidemiological investigator to monitor Mr. Kim's traveling companions and promised to toughen the quarantine measures on direct flights from Africa.
아프리카에서 오는 직항로 두 편에 대해서는 올 때마다 게이트 브릿지 앞에서 비행기 문 열리자마자 검역을 하는 거예요.
The KCDC says 17 out of 30 people who had entered Korea from Ebola-affected countries are being monitored. The Ebola virus's maximum dormant period of 3 weeks has not been passed yet.
Related agencies are getting busy with Pope Francis's visit to Korea just around the corner. Prime Minister Chung Hong-won has inspected the ongoing preparations himself.
Prime Minister Chung Hong-won visited a town in Seosam, South Chungcheong Province, to check safety measures for the papal visit. Some 60,000 people are expected to attend the closing mass at the Asia Youth Day event on August 17th. Pope Francis will be presiding over. The Prime Minister stressed efforts to prevent any accidents. Local governments of regions where the Pope will be visiting are also speeding up last-minute preparations. South Chungcheong Province has finished revamping roads and flower beds on routes the Pope will be traveling. The city of Daejeon is also inspecting traffic and accommodations for the August 15th Mass at the Daejeon World Cup Stadium. In addition, emergency drills are being held against possible scenarios of terrorism or accidents.
각 분야별로 정말 굉장히 바쁩니다. 상황실에서 현장에서는 이제 상황 유지를 하고 파트별로 지금 굉장히 팀 미팅이 굉장히 많이 이루어지는 상황이세요.
The Catholic Diocese of Daejeon has put up banners at some 130 churches around the city to create a welcoming mood for the pontiff.
우리 지역에 또 우리 국가에 어떤 메시지를 주실까 귀를 기울이면서 그 마음의 준비를 함께 하고 있습니다.
With the Pope's arrival impending, related agencies and authorities are moving quickly in last-stage preparations.
Many people try to beat the heat by spending time at beaches during the hot summer season, but rip currents are posing a threat to beachgoers. Rip currents occur when oceanic currents move rapidly away from the shore toward the ocean. Now, rip currents have been observed recently not only in Busan but on Jeju Island as well, raising concerns about beach safety.
The beach is packed with people playing in the water. All of a sudden, a strong water current captures the swimmers and pushes them far away from the shore. Dozens of swimmers who had been swept away along with their tubes as far as 20 meters away wait for the rescue service in fear, holding hands. Over the past few days, some 50 swimmers in this area fell victim to rip currents. Luckily, all of them were rescued.
네, 저도 서핑할 때 이안유에 쓸려봤는데 그럴 때는 수영해도 소용이 없고 무서워요.
Rip currents occur because vast sandbanks have been formed in the water due to the recent typhoons. When the middle part of a sandbank is swept by sea waves, a deep ravine is formed, resulting in strong rips.
어느 해안에서나 이안유는 생기는데 눈에 띄질 않는 거죠. 근데 이렇게 태풍이 오거나 특별히 거울 같은 게 생겼을 때는 그 이안유가 강하니까.
If you become swept away by a rip current, do not panic and try to swim back to the shore when you reach the area where the flow ends and hold on to the tube until rescue workers arrive.
Rare misprinted postage stamps can be valued at over $1 million. Take a look at rare old stamps from Korea and abroad, which have become cultural treasures in their own right.
The first American airmail stamp, Jenny, was displayed in Korea for the first time. The image of an airplane on the stamp is inverted, the result of a 1918 misprint. At the time, the misprinted stamps were to be discarded, but now their value has reached approximately $1.5 million. This British stamp was meant to be rosy in color, but it was printed blue because of an ink mix-up. There are only 26 stamps of this kind in the world, and their price is expected to exceed $1 million. Among Korean stamps, this is the most expensive. When it was first issued in 1955, the publisher ran out of paper, and the stamps were temporarily printed on paper with wavy patterns, eventually making them famous. A collection of rare stamps, as well as some 200,000 postage stamps from 68 countries, have been put on display in Korea.
우유한 우표를 전시함으로써 그 우표에 담겨 있는 역사와 과학, 문화 이런 다방면의 그 부유한 문화를 국민들한테 알리고.
When a paper card is photographed with a smart gadget, the sender's face appears on a 3D screen along with a message. The exhibition also showcases next-generation technology, such as stamps with location tracking and social networking functions.
옛날에는 우표를 그냥 단순하게 편지 붙이고 우표 엽서 쓸 때만 썼는데 와보니까 또 새로운 방법으로 미래의 우표를 어떻게 보낼 수 있는지도 알게 되어서 되게 신기하고 재밌었어요.
The exhibition provides visitors with a unique experience that can't be found in electronic mail. It will continue to run until next Tuesday.
The Uber taxi-hailing application is a hit in Seoul, but this on-demand cab service has been challenged by taxi drivers in the city who feel threatened by the more upscale and convenient service. Now, is Uber a creative car-sharing means or a dangerous and illegal ride? We'll take a look.
Catching a cab is an ordeal when you need one in a hurry or in the middle of the night.
특수 지역이 있어요. 동대문, 여의도 안 잡히는 지역이 있어요. 서울에서 경기로 넘어갈 때 너무 안 잡히더라고요. 그럴 때 우버 이용할 것 같아요.
Uber comes in handy when taxi cabs are scarce. The Uber application helps you secure a vehicle simply by entering information through your smartphone. In other countries, there are different Uber services available depending on the vehicle type, but in Korea, the original Uber service is currently in operation. The production staff decided to personally check out the Uber service. First, the current location and destination are entered into the app. Information about the vehicle and the driver as well as an estimated fare immediately show up on the smartphone. Then, just press the call button and wait. Before long, a luxury sedan arrives at the pickup point and the driver even gets out to open the door for you. This upscale service is what makes Uber so special. Are there really that many Uber users, we wondered?
5월까지는 이제 강남권에 이제 자기들끼리만 타고 다녔었어요. 탔던 분들이 만족도가 되게 높으세요. 제 구매율도 높고.
There are some services that set Uber apart from other city cabs. Passengers can recharge their phones or drink water provided in the vehicle, all free of charge. An email confirmation provides such information as the route taken or estimated time of arrival. Let's compare the fares of an Uber vehicle with an ordinary taxi cab. The fare for the Uber ride was about $10 higher. That's the price you pay for such a comfortable ride. But taxi operators are challenging Uber, claiming that the new app-based service is taking customers away from the already competitive and saturated market.
그걸 당연히 없애야 되죠. 그걸 불법인데 정상적인 영업이 아니지 않습니까?
The Uber debate rages on as existing taxi operators took issue with the fact that Uber vehicles are rentals and their drivers are just ordinary drivers not licensed to drive a cab. The city of Seoul has reported Uber Korea for violating the current traffic laws and asked the Korea Communication Commission to block the app. Uber has countered that all it aims to do is to provide people with fast and convenient transportation means and to merely find a vehicle for a passenger, not operate a transportation business. The controversy surrounding Uber has made one thing clear. People want something better than the existing public transportation system. Uber has challenged the city to meet the rising demand for a more convenient and comfortable service.
And now we'll take a look at the markets, followed by the world weather. And that's it for this edition of News Today. We'll see you again on Monday. Have a great weekend.